right. Hi, everybody. My name is Ben, and I'm in New York.
And my name is Addy, and I'm in London, United Kingdom.
United Kingdom. And welcome to Nice Guy Deep Dive, where Addy and I take a deeper dive into things that we think are interesting. And hopefully you will too, right? So that's kind of the goal. Anyway, so today's topic, Addy brought this up. We're going to talk about anger. And maybe we're going to focus it on maybe how men deal with anger in various situations. And maybe we'll even get into how we learn about anger and learn how to deal with anger when we're kids. And especially as nice guys, you know, we kind of process anger a little bit differently, at least I do. But I want to start here though, Addy. It's like, yeah, so this kind of came out of a chat that 4 friends basically had yesterday. And Addy, you kind of lost your shit. And you kind of did.
I did.
Right, you own it. So let's talk about that, man. So this is your topic. So what did you want to talk about anger? What do you want to say?
Yeah, so this is something actually I've been thinking about I think the last week I was thinking about something related to, I guess, how to express negative emotions. And yesterday's conversation with me, Ben, a couple of friends of ours.
Yeah, we don't need to say their names, but
we don't want to get into their names. But one of them, he said something. The conversation was about dating, and he said something which actually didn't really vibe with my inner beliefs, and I thought it was a kind of a limiting belief that he had, and he's a guy that sometimes I feel that, like, you know, I mean.
Well, honestly, you and I both know this isn't about anything he did.
Yes.
So why don't we move on from
it's
that?
more about me. So basically something he said triggered me, and my reaction was like, oh, you're an ass. That's basically what my reaction was at that point. And Ben, who was on the call, kindly reminded me that, hey, you know, this is a safe space. Like, people are talking. Like, he will not accept this kind of, name calling on the call. And I thought that was fair. That was 100% fair. I was out of line. So I did apologize to my friend and to the others on the call and to Ben, right? But it just got me thinking as to, like, what actually triggered that within me. And I've been like trying to think of this all day as to, like, you know, what actually it was. And I think it's just, if something is very much different or very much like an antithesis to what I believe or what I really believe strongly, and if someone expresses that at a certain point, like, usually I never lose my shit. I'm always very calm, controlled, and Ben knows this, right? But it just so happened that it triggered me at that minute, and some emotion arose, which was like, oh, this is what I used to do, or this is what was, like, you know, my exact thought process X number of years ago, and I just lost it.
So you weren't even upset at him; you were upset at yourself for ways that you used to think. But it's really interesting, though. I'm not going to play armchair psychologist. I will say, though, that I had one of my very first therapists used to say that all conversations are selfish, meaning that it's really all about us. And that conversation was wholly about you. And what's interesting is you went from being angry to making it personal. And I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious if you knew that was happening at the time, because you were really
I didn't at all. I had no idea. I was just angry, and when you're in that state, you just actually, you know, fly off the handle. That's what happens.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned something. You gave me some notes earlier, and where are they? There they are. And it's kind of like what about? So you brought up in the notes passive aggressive behavior. And I find that interesting that you put that down there. I almost feel like you have this need to tell me about this stuff. So talk to me about passive aggressive behavior, and then I'll then you can ask me a question. But right now, I feel like since I hadn't seen that side of you before, I mean, I've seen you be passionate in conversations. I've even seen you blow up at the sky, but you went
Yeah.
so far as to like literally get off the call for a moment. I think you said you were going to
Yes.
get tea, but it was very conveniently timed. Like, I'm getting tea now. So, why do you think you flew off the handle? What was it about the anger that it was just like uncontained?
Yeah. I think it was building at a certain point, and once it sort of built, I kind of, because usually when you do have these thoughts, you kind of try to like focus on the discussion instead of on the person and what the person is saying. And I think that's where the switch happened. For a second, I took my focus away from what he was actually saying, and I thought about, oh, this guy, like,
Yeah,
like
it became really personal because this is what I'm wondering. I mean, it's almost like this guy gets on the call and you're triggered, period, full stop. And I'm wondering, because honestly, that's what I feel. And I'm wondering if that's almost like a weird kind of covert contract in a sense, because if this guy shows up, I'm anticipating that he's going to do A, B, and C, and I'm prepared.
yeah.
Right?
So for full disclosure, I did call him after the call.
You don't,
hold
on. You don't need to justify or apologize or even say any of that stuff. That's really not the point, is it? That's really not the point of what we're talking about. We're talking about how do nice guys deal with anger. It's like you have what I call a slip up. I mean, I have those too, where I had one. Mine come out in like really kind of messed up emails where I literally want to kill the person in my email. And sometimes I can stop myself and sometimes I can't. And every time I send an angry email, I regret it 100%. I mean, I just sent one last week. It wasn't that much. It was angry. It's just that it was really kind of angry. It wasn't like yelling, not everything in all caps, and to be honest with you, that never serves me well. And I probably lost a potential client because of it. But without the but, that's just kind of how it is. But I'm wondering, like, when I was working at Brooks Brothers, there was the manager above me. I wouldn't go into a burning building to save if I could. Right? That's the level of vitriol I had for this person. And if I knew she was going to be there, I was already triggered when I left my door. So at any sign of anything she said, I was already at level 10. Right? And the best thing that happened to me is when COVID happened and I was kind of taken out of that situation because I couldn't deal with it. Where that kind of anger, I've been in therapy. I've worked on my anger. I have a book somewhere on anger management, but I just don't know how to, once I'm in it, I don't know how to get out of it. And that's kind of, I don't know if that's a nice guy thing. I don't know if that's how, maybe because I didn't have good avenues for anger. And, in my family, we went from 0 to 60 very quick. It was very, very quick. Everybody was very hot-headed in my family. And, growing up, that's how I thought people communicate. I'm like, oh, that's how people talk. Because that's what you do as a child, right? That's what you see. Mommy and daddy fight, everybody yells, that's what's happening, right? So I guess I don't know where we go from here because there's so many different aspects of anger. You talk about how does it affect, you have a question, it's very general. How does it affect certain people disproportionately? That's too general for me. That's very
Well,
that's like academic, and I don't really want to talk about academic. I want to talk about more personal stuff. So how does your anger affect other people? Like, how do you think the other people felt in the room yesterday when you got angry? I know how I felt.
yeah,
What is your perception of how people felt?
yeah. I mean, I felt people just like people were surprised, that I reacted so strongly. I think that was the first emotion, right? The second emotion was actually uh, trying to realize as to why I was being so loud, or like why I was expressing it this way. Like, because they had never seen that or never seen me be like that before. So it'd be like, huh, that I never expected that person would get so angry at this. And the third thing was they kind of felt that essentially they were being talked over, or like they didn't have
Yeah.
any input just because I was often like my own thing, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's a really good way to describe it. It's funny at a time, and I'm guilty of this, is the need to be right. Right. And I find that a lot of things with nice guys is that need to be the need to be right. And that's exactly what I thought. It's like I was like, oh man, he really wants to prove his point. Not only does he want him to prove his point, he wants the other guy to say, yes, you are right, you are smart, you are, right? That's exactly what I got from all of that. Um, I
yeah,
think
and
that
honestly, in that moment, that's actually what I want. Just in that moment, like if that was what the outcome would have been, I would have calmed down immediately. But then the point is that, yeah, like no one's gonna give you that if you're gonna be like, being loud and you're gonna talk over them. They're not gonna give you that.
what do you think it is though, that need to be right? And if you can talk from like your point of view as opposed to they and them and
Yeah, yeah. I think it's probably comes down to working in an industry where you're kind of supposed to have all the answers. So just
hmm,
for context, I work in well, it's basically fraud detection. So a lot of the times, the questions I get asked, like the expectation is that I'm going to provide the right answer, and I kind of pride myself on being able to figure that out, and I'm pretty good at figuring that out fast.
mhm.
And I think it stems from doing that quite a lot, and then you see it kind of like moves on more to your interaction with friends, which is what yesterday was.
I mean,
And
for me, the need to be right for me was, or I can't say is, I don't not like that. I will say 2019 and before, I would say, yeah, I was guilty of a lot of needing to be right. But what it was is I needed, for me, that equaled respect, and it equaled, well, really respect. I mean, I liked being the smartest guy in the room, right? I really did. I liked knowing things. And I liked not only knowing them, but sharing them,
yeah,
but letting other people know how much I know. But it was never really, I mean, but when I look back at that, it's very destructive and it puts people off, especially because there are ways to know things and ways to know things. And mine was a very arrogant way. Like, I know this, why don't you? That kind of a thing, right?
uh,
So, I mean, I
yeah,
understand you need to be right at work. Everybody needs to be right at work. When their boss comes to them, we all want to have the right answers. Work is one thing, but I still think the basic reasons behind wanting to be right is work, personal, it doesn't really matter. I think those needs are still there, regardless of our situation. I just wonder
yeah.
what makes it, what triggers you that admit. I know it triggers me when I'm being disregarded or disrespected. That triggers, well, used to trigger me. I treat it differently now, but that's what used to trigger me. Um, and you probably saw this, and I'll say this for anybody who's listening in the from the No Mr. Nice Guy meeting on Wednesday. I was so guilty of doing that in my reflections, right? Needing to be the guy who knew stuff, right?
Yeah,
Because I wanted people to see me as a guy who knows stuff. And the only thing I did, I didn't help anybody. No, I helped nobody because honestly, that's such a turnoff. And I just hurt my own case because that would be like, oh, there he goes again, right? So anyway, that was about that. But what triggers you? What actually was that trigger yesterday? Was it really just that this person was saying something? Or because I don't think he was saying anything that controversial about dating, but you kind of really took it as personal, like a personal affront.
Yeah. It was a combination of me having believed that exact thing in the past and actually, working to come out of it and figuring out that what he was actually saying, in my opinion, is not something that is valid, or that's not true for me.
Oh, but it was valid to you. That's, you said that used to be how you think, and now you don't anymore.
Yeah, so now it's no longer valid to me. So, and I used to struggle with the exact same thoughts. So for me, what happens is then that, like, actually seeing that history of like, oh, I used to make the exact same.
Oh, okay, I get it. So
and plus, when he was saying something, it kind of became like, okay, I was already in that zone, and then I think he said, let me finish, or then something, he interrupted me or something, because I was probably being too loud. And that was that moment of like, oh, who the hell are you to interrupt me? That's right. That's what it became. That was that trigger. That was like, who the hell are you to interrupt me? And what have you done to interrupt me? Or like, like, if you're telling that I've solved this problem, I found a solution to this, right? And I'm trying to give you my perspective. And at that point, you're interrupting me. That's when I personalized it more than anything else.
Yeah, that's really true. It's like, if I remember correctly, this was because we were talking about dating, and he had this kind of rating system, this 1 out of 30, right? Which was interesting. So, God, I hope he's not going to watch this, because we're not talking bad about you. Please, if you're watching about it, this isn't about you. We're talking about a circumstance. I hope you please know that. So, I just, I think it's so interesting is that, I personally don't think whatever you got angry about is actually settled within you, because settled issues don't cause that kind of anger. I know for me, my anger, I get angry when I feel powerless. When I feel powerless, I actually have dreams that I'm supposed to go to the airport and I can't get there. I'm supposed to get somewhere and I don't know how to work my phone, right? So I have these, so when I'm feeling powerless, that's when I'm at my most volatile, if that makes sense. I mean, that's kind of like my kryptonite in a sense. And here I am as an entrepreneur in a small business, and there's nothing but powerlessness for the most part. That's why I have a business coach, right? So I can take control of what I control and kind of drive that forward. Yet still, there's so many things out of my control. But what I've actually learned is to let those things be out of my control. It's like it's like what in a 12-step, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference of the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's a big one. That's a really big thing. Yeah, anger's a bitch, man. Especially if it's, because honestly, it's like, have you ever blown up like that at work? Ever?
At work? Just once that I can remember in the past 6-7 years. And it happened with a colleague, and the colleague was like, oh yeah, he was always, I guess, we had a significant rivalry. We had a very strong rivalry, and he was always like, doing sneaky things, and he was trying to do stuff like behind my back, and like, just a very bad.
These are your perceptions, though, right? Did you catch him?
No, he was 100%. Like that. Well, my boss had said it. My boss's boss was aware of it. They're all aware of it.
Oh, interesting.
And so it was actually at one point where he was saying something, and because he was more senior than me, so essentially, but he was at that point a little bit insecure because I was doing something that kind of overlapped with what he was doing. And I tried to talk to him about it a few times, but he never listened. Like he never wanted to talk about it at all. And he was just like very rigid. I want to do things my way. And at some point, he was saying something, and I just cut him in the meeting, like in front of everyone. I was like, "Hey, can you just stop? What you're saying is totally nonsense. It doesn't make any sense, absolutely at all. This is just a waste of time. Can I go ahead and say this?" Because everyone knew what he was on about was just repeating himself. He was not really trying to take any input. So when I said that, like people were taken aback because they didn't expect me to be that direct and that confrontational in front of like 7 people and people who are superiors. And at that point, like my boss took me aside, he calmed me down, and he was like, "Hey, this is not how you should be talking." I was like, "Spencer, I get who's I should not be saying names, but anyway, I was like, "Hey, this is something that I don't think is acceptable at all, and I don't think it's even worth our time to be listening to this." Mm-hmm. And he was like, "Yeah, we get it, but it was a big political thing because they didn't want to offend his team, all these sorts of things."
So you were yelling?
No, I was not yelling. I was not yelling at all. I was just direct, and I was very.
You didn't
very
raise your
cold.
voice?
I didn't.
You were just talking like this?
Yes, I was like, "Hey, what you're saying, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This is
Why did your boss? And you said your boss pulled you aside because you were being calm and direct?
No, because I was being calm and direct, but I was being rude in that sense.
Oh, rude.
Talking to someone who was a little bit senior to me, but I was being rude.
Was there any consequence for that, or just the
talking? There was no consequence.
There was no consequence. Yeah, I was almost fired several times from Brooks Brothers. I just,
really?
The worst part about it is not only did she make my life miserable, she knew she did, and she enjoyed that. So there was really no win for me, and that's what was so hard. I mean, honestly, when we got shut down, I was very, very happy, to be honest with you. When we got shut down for COVID, I was really, really grateful in that sense, because I knew I'd never have to see that person again. It didn't, but see, the thing is though, it didn't resolve anything. I haven't had that kind of anger because I work for myself. I'm in my apartment. I chat with people over Zoom. The only anger I get is if something happens within my apartment, and then it's just my cats who see me. They don't really care as long as I feed them and water them. They can give a shit. They're cats. Let me ask you something. You also brought up here about adolescent anger, and it was like the impact of unexpressed adolescent anger for nice guys and its manifestations. So what do you want to talk about regarding like your adolescence? And did you have the ability to be angry as an adolescent when you were a teenager?
Not really. I mean, I don't think I did I didn't really express much anger as a teenager. I was just very.
Were you just not angry, or were you never angry?
I was angry, but I would never express it.
So what did you do instead? It had to go somewhere. Where'd it go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of, it went a lot into like my music. Like I used to play guitar in university, so I went a little bit over there. It went into like obviously a bit of relationship.
Wait, you're talking about university?
Like an undergraduate degree.
Wait. I'm talking about, that's not adolescence. I'm talking about when you were like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Even at that point, I was the same. Like I would never really express anger. And I think that probably went in, that probably went in like being good at other stuff. Like I use that as motivation to be better at actually studying and just be better at.
You never threw a tantrum. You never threw a fit. You were just like Zen master. I am angry, but I'm going to go focus on something. Seriously?
Yeah, I was very rarely angry. It's so funny. It sounds so funny, but that is actually very true.
What made you bring this up then? You wrote this down as something we should talk about. What made you bring that up?
Yeah, because I feel that I probably should have got more angry. You know,
Why would you want, why?
because at that age you're kind of supposed to, well, not supposed to, but like you're supposed to be a little bit more, have thoughts about like, oh, like I don't like the way things are going, or I don't like what my teachers are telling me, or I don't like what my parents are telling me, right? And you have like a bit of a rebellious phase and you listen to, I don't know, grunge music or whatever. But overall I would definitely say that it's easier to have that outlet to express that, and I never did.
So maybe you did because you didn't learn how to, is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
I
yeah,
never felt safe how to, like, I felt like if I was too angry, like I don't know what repercussions I would have.
as a child.
Yeah.
So you got angry, you just never expressed it.
Yes.
See, and
I would just hide it.
I'll say this, I was the complete opposite. My whole family never met an emotion it didn't express. So, but it's still no good. I mean, it's still no good because then it's about inappropriate expression, which is what I would do. What I would do now as a grown person at a job that I loved, have inappropriate expressions of anger or whatever. So I guess that's interesting. At least that's interesting to me.
Yeah, because we have like totally different approaches to this and like totally different,
well,
like ways of expressing anger, especially when we were adolescents, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, though, I mean, I think that really did me a complete disservice, though, because I entered the world thinking that everybody expresses emotions that way. And I had to learn the hard way that it's not done that way. And that's been a long lesson learned over many years. I mean, I'm even through the last several years, it's still learning that same lesson over and over again about expressing your emotions. And it's so funny. I don't know if there's even an answer for this, because as a child, your parents are it. And if you're lucky to have parents who understand how to deal with emotions and how to express them in a positive, not positive, but in a more helpful manner, then you're lucky. But if you're not, that's still all you know, and you have to kind of suck it up until you're able to meet other people and try and figure it all out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, it just reflects in like, the relationships you have when you become an adult and just interactions with the people. I mean, it's just very, very, it really frames your worldview, or like frames like your lens with which you view relationships sometimes. And then what do you think is appropriate 100%. And inappropriate?
100%. I mean, I looked at my marriage as I looked at my parents' marriage for my marriage. And like, oh, they argued, I'll argue. Oh, they fought, I'll fight. Thinking that that's just how it's done. I still was, I mean, even in 2016, I still didn't have it figured out. So, it's so funny because there's one of my favorite books is called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. And one of the things he talks about is that if you don't get what you need in childhood, you are forever searching for it and you will never find it, but you're always searching.
Wow. That's
I know it sounds pretty idea. But it's almost pretty sad in a sense, because if you're never going to find it, why search for it? But the fact is that we need it. It's like people who aren't loved as kids will always search for love. And even when they get it, they won't know it and they keep searching. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing. And I first read that book when I was 17, and it's really true. I've been on a constant quest for, I guess, respect, for being acknowledged that I exist, because that's really what it's about. I see you, you see me, right? Yeah. I'm not somebody you just yell at. You're not somebody I yell at, that kind of a thing.
Did you feel that, I guess, you were always fighting for respect when you were young? Like you were fighting with your family for respect?
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know it then, but I didn't know it then, but I believe I always was. I think that's why I really went into, I started painting and I started singing and being on stage, because the moment I'm on stage, everybody, my family and friends would be like, ooh, right? So you get that thing you're craving. But doing something for that thing, like, doing something for the high is never a good thing. But, who knew? I didn't know anything back then, but I know it now, but I didn't know it back then. So yeah, I think I've always been on that quest, even into my adult years, into my adult years. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. And I think that's like, yeah, for me, and if I were to try to think of like what I am probably fighting for, or at least what I would be looking for, is to find the appropriate outlet for that. And I think a lot of that manifests in me trying out creative things and me trying out different things. Because like with my music and with like, I mean, just this whole bunch of things at work and all the side projects that I'm doing, I'm always looking for the right outlet to actually create something, or at least just to express what I really, feel. And and the fact that he just brought that up 10 minutes ago, I do hope I find it. But I mean, if that's the book and that's the philosophy, it's like, okay, you're trying to
this is one guy.
Realize it, basically.
This is one book and one guy. I mean,
true.
I don't know. I mean, it makes sense to me. It doesn't have to make sense to you, but maybe it does.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of something now. I can't remember what it is. I'm going to pause this for 1 second. We're back. I had to take some aspirin, so I put us on pause. Not that he gives me a headache. Not that Addy gives me a headache, but okay, he doesn't. But you know what I was thinking about? It's like all of this quest for appropriate emotions, I guess, doesn't mean you can't have the occasional slip up, right? Like I have, like I said, I sent that email this week that I kind of wish I didn't do. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm like, you know what? I'm a human being. I did something. I don't like it. I'll apologize. It wasn't that bad, but I'm just saying there are things that just happen and you get angry and you have human emotions. And hopefully the other person on the other end will understand that. Sometimes they don't. And that's a shame. But that becomes about them at that point. But, being a human being, we're going to get it wrong more often than not. And I think that's okay. I mean, it's not an excuse, but I think it's okay.
Yeah, it again goes back to the idea of like, always wanting to be right or do things the right way at least. And I mean, and when you do screw up, like I screwed up yesterday, it's not more about like you screwing up. It's about how you react to it. Let's say if I had finished the call and I had not apologized to my friend or not apologized to you or anyone, if I had just been like, or if I just hung up and left, right? Because I mean, for a second you were wondering like has Addy left? Like, has he just gone? Has he not really,
Yeah, that's true. I did. I texted you. Absolutely. I'm like, are you okay?
But then I realized like, hey, let me join back in, right? I screwed up, so I'm going to apologize and I'm going to continue. And we had a somewhat decent conversation afterwards. So at least I managed to salvage that from the experience.
And I guarantee you the next time we chat, nobody will even think about it. Just one of those things. But I had a not really an argument. I had a disagreement with another meetup that I was in. I think I told you about this. Anyway, I actually did leave the meetup because I was very, very upset. And when I tried to get back in to the next meetup, I said to the leader of the meetup, I said, listen, I will happily apologize for my behavior, but at the same time, I think I'm owed an apology because I was treated poorly, and I think that's fair. And she said, no, and you can leave. And I was like, well, okay. But so there are always like, I got angry, I left, I wanted to apologize, but I also wanted them to acknowledge their part in it. She said no, and now I don't go to the meetup anymore. Consequences, right? Consequences.
Yeah.
And when we have emotional blowups, we have to face, there are going to be consequences. And
100%.
being
100%.
being an adult, you just got to accept those consequences, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the screw up is like, yeah, that's not something that's going to stick with people, right? Or that's something that's going to really color their perspective towards you. They're just going to think like, oh yeah, this guy's
Well,
unreasonable.
but it's totally, it's also possible that it does. You know, it's also possible that you happen to say something that triggered them. And even though you thought it was about you, they thought it was about them. And they're like, that happens too. I mean, I still think you got to be true to yourself and be authentic and admit when you're wrong. And if the other person doesn't want to accept that apology, there's nothing you can really do about it. I feel like we're straying, but that's probably because I have a really bad headache right now. So I feel like my brain is like only on 2 cylinders right now. But what do you say we call it a day on this topic? And we'll,
Yeah.
are you cool with that?
We've actually explored it quite a bit. Like we've gone into a lot of different facets of like where the anger actually came from and how it impacts, I guess, different areas of our life and how it's impacted us personally. I think we've actually gone into quite a bit of depth, and I'm sure if any, like, you know, if anyone's watching, they're gonna, like, you know, take much more or take something out of this and hopefully be able to apply it to their own life if it's applicable.
Awesome. So so let me just say goodbye and thank you for watching Nice Guy Deep Dive. My name is Ben. I'm in New York.
My name is Adi, and I'm in London, United Kingdom, as always.
Kingdom. And anyway, thank you so much. This will we'll be back with another one next week. I'm not sure what our topic is going to be, but hopefully it'll be something as good as this. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys.